continuing to react to the Browns' 37-20 win over the Jets as they lock up a playoff berth for the second time in 4 years and position themselves in the postseason with a chance to even earn the 1 seed potentially next week, which leads us into our next conversation. I think it's a pretty interesting one, Anthony, because, listen, there is obviously a lot that could still be at stake next week when they take the field against the Bengals. If the Ravens lose on Sunday, there's a chance you win the 1 seed. Even if that doesn't happen, there's still the debate over whether or not you should rest players going into the playoffs, give them some time off. I think it's also particularly interesting with this Browns team this year because of the sheer number of injuries that they've sustained this season. Where do you stand on the topic of whether or not they should rest guys next week or play them in a not maybe meaningless game, depending on what happens with the Ravens, but even if it isn't a game that maybe or it could or couldn't impact where you sort of fit in the AFC playoff picture?
Yeah, let's have this discussion like the Ravens won. They beat Miami and they're out, right? They're the 1 seed and we're going to be the 5. Where I fall in this is like right down the center. I think it's a really scary proposition. Yeah, right. I'm right on the fence, but it's a scary proposition especially with the way that this year has gone. Like even the second to last play of the game, you got Zadarius Smith down on the field and you're like, oh my goodness, like we cannot win a football game without somebody getting hurt, So it's like, hey, we don't want to put these guys at risk. But at the same token, you're playing with an offense who's been together for 5 weeks, So it's like, okay, there's going to be certain guys. Like, I don't think you'll see Elijah Moore. Obviously, you hope that he's okay. That was an ugly injury he took. So get him rested up. You want Amari Cooper. If he's 100%, let him get out there, play a quarter, play a half maybe. But if he's not, I think you rest him, let him get healed up. And I think that if there are guys that are banged up, I think it's important to try to get them healthy prior to the playoffs, whoever our opponent's going to be. Now, I think Joe Flacco needs to play. I think he's got to continue to see reps, to see the field, and some of your key guys on offense and on defense, I think are going to still play, but I don't think you're going to see the whole brigade out there as there are some guys that need to get rested up.
So I want to preface this by saying that normally I am team don't rest guys, or I'm team just play guys even for a little bit of time, because I do think we tend to see that even the teams that had the advantage of, hey, we locked up a playoff berth super early, or we locked up the 1 seed super early, or whatever it might be, that then end up resting players in a meaningless game at the end of the season, they tend to not play as well coming off of that period of rest. So I think there's just kind of history that shows that. But I think the points that you bring up about it feels like every time the Browns take the field, you're just holding your breath, waiting to find out who the next injury is. Elijah Moore goes down tonight. He left with a head injury. Assuming that's a concussion, that probably means multiple weeks. I know Amari Cooper had a head injury and he was able to come back, but this one looked a lot more serious than the one Amari Cooper had. So yeah, that's a problem. You mentioned Zadarius Smith at the end of the game. So I think that there are some concerns there. I just think, man, like this team has taken on so much water when it comes to these injuries. I don't know if I want to risk it in a meaningless game to even play these guys. It almost gives you an extra week to get them sort of ready, plus the 10-day layoff here you get before you play your next game. So I kind of like the idea of giving guys the time to get healthy, get back, not risk any injuries. I'm not saying you sit everybody, but I do think your key players, your Denzel Wards, who have been susceptible to injuries already, your Myles Garrett, who you just can't lose, if you want to make any kind of splash in the playoffs, your Joe Flacco's, who, listen, you're on your 4th quarterback, you don't want to be on your 5th. Like, these are certain guys I think I wouldn't play.
Yeah. No, you make good points, and I'm sure that's going to be the discussion. It's not going to be tonight. These guys are exhausted coming off of that Houston trip into a short week. They got the job done. So I'm sure this weekend, probably after Sunday, they're going to be like, all right, who's playing and who's not? Because Peyton Manning always used to say that he preferred to play, and obviously if he would have got hurt, the Colts seasons would be done with, so it's like, you gotta walk that line finally. And maybe into, like, I'm talking like, hey, that game reps are the most important. No, you can still get quality reps in practice. So making sure that those guys run through a week of practice and run through warmups and then take the game off could be another option that they go with. But, at this point, dude, whatever Stefanski wants to do, I'm cool with it. Like, that'll work for me.
Well, you say that now, and then Myles Garrett gets hurt, and then you're like,
Yeah,
man,
right.
he should. Then we're sitting here like, take away the coach of the year. He shouldn't be even. He
Fire
should.
him.
What is he
Fire
doing?
him.
Get him.
Get
Yeah,
that.
fire Kevin Stefanski. No, and I do want to be. I want to do justice here by saying, like, you bring up the game reps. I do think too, for an offense that's only really been together with Joe Flacco for 5 weeks now, it
Mhm.
probably makes sense to get him more game reps. I think that's probably fair. Like, yeah, they're playing really well, but there's always room to kind of get on the same page with guys and keep improving.
Right.
So I'm not saying that stuff's not important. I just think if the Ravens win this weekend, you can't possibly risk these guys playing in a meaningless game. And I said, I normally against that. I normally say play them anyway, but in this instance, I'm not. I think there's maybe even a case you made that if you have a chance to win the 1 seed, maybe you don't play them. But I
Yeah.
don't think that would ever be a possibility because if there's a chance to win the 1 seed, you know these guys are going to want to go for it, and you know that they're going to go out there and try to give it their all to make that happen. That's just not. I understand like the mentality of a football player. You're not gonna if there's a chance to win something else or earn something else, you're not going to sit it out. So I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no question. If there is a chance at the 1 seed, I'd say let's ride because what we know is that grass
Browns
you're standing.
country. Let's
Yeah,
ride.
right, right. We know one thing for sure. That grass you're standing on is we have a legit home field advantage there. And if there's any chance to have the AFC or even a couple playoff games go through Cleveland Browns Stadium, I think you sell
Yeah.
out. You throw your chips in the middle, man, because that's what you need. But we'll see. We'll see what Kevin has to say. I think I my answer is horrible, right down the middle. Play a couple guys, don't play some. But it's going to be a conversation, and thankfully we don't get paid enough to make that decision. So that's why Kevin
Yeah.
Stefanski gets the big bucks.
Well, and to your point, that idea of home field advantage sounds really, really nice
Yeah.
for a Browns team that's played so well at home. I also think too, if the Ravens do lose to the Dolphins this weekend, you know that the Steelers seem to play really well against the Baltimore Ravens. In a weird twist of fate, Browns fans will have to be Steelers fans for that last week of the season as well. But yeah, I think because of some of that history there, you'd feel pretty good about the idea that maybe the 1 seed's a possibility if that were to play
Mhm.
out. So we'll see what Sunday brings, but at least you know the Browns are in the playoffs as at least the 5 seed, the top wild card spot in the AFC. Some other things that could still happen, but that's out of the Browns' hands at this point. In the meantime, you can keep on following along with more content like this as we continue to react to the Browns' win over the Jets on Thursday Night Football over at the Browns Digest YouTube page and, of course, at brownsdigest.com.